This is perfectly natural.
One of my favorite movies this year is Barbarian. Before we kind of jump into the details of this film, which I don't want to speak on all the details because one of the great things about watching this is being surprised, chat. But for those that don't know, the general premise for the movie, it follows this young woman who is visiting Detroit on a job interview, and she rented out this place with Airbnb. She discovers that it's been double booked of another man played by Bill Skarsgård, the woman being played by Georgina Campbell. And they have to deal with this, like the awkwardness and the tension, late at night, having to deal with this double booking and being uncomfortable with each other. But both of them soon discover that there is something weird going on in this house. And that's pretty much what the marketing is for this movie, chat, I have to really compliment. I have to really compliment the excellent marketing campaign for this film. It's a marketing campaign that pretty much gives nothing away, like what the threat is. It doesn't really showcase like all the various other characters in the movie. For all you know, you think there's probably only about 3 people in this, maybe even just 2, because you have Georgina Campbell, yes, you have Bill Skarsgård, but you also have Justin Long, who you barely glimpse in the trailers. However, the marketing, while it doesn't reveal a lot, I also think it's very intriguing. I remember when I first saw this, I think it was in front of Nope. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. It looks kind of like a cool horror thrill. I was like, okay. I was a little unsure of it at first, but the more I saw it, the more I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm kind of digging this. Like all these, actors are obviously very capable, Chad. It's been a long time since we've seen, Justin Long in something I think kind of worthwhile. He's done a lot of, direct to a lot of VOD movies and, Tuscan things. And so I was like, okay, I'm curious to see what they're going to do. And Chad, I got to tell you, I think that this is one of the best movies of 2022 and probably the best horror film of the year as well. And listen, this has been a pretty good year for horror. I mean, we're just coming off of X, which is also one of my favorite films of this year. And, a lot of people right now, they're saying, no, that the X is the better horror film, Barbarian's better horror film. I'm like, listen, for myself, I think they're both great movies. But I think for me, Barbarian edges out X. But not to speak ill of X at all. It's a great film. And I'm looking forward to Pearl, which is coming out very, very soon as well. Actually, matter of fact, Barbarian will be competing against, I think, Pearl this week. But I gotta tell you, Chad, that this film, it perfectly builds tension in its first act by making the mundane horrifying. I can't think of too many Airbnb movies or movies that are kind of about Airbnbs, but it analyzes and capitalizes on the anxiousness that people have to deal with when they have to rent out an Airbnb or those equivalent types of services. The stresses of it, the anxiety that it builds, the uncertainness, shit, which I've dealt with, believe me, going on a lot of these double toasted trips or traveling. There always seems to be some issue. We all have, I think a lot of us who have, used Airbnb, we have our own horror story, right? And I could see how that might have been used as inspiration for this film. And this film, it concocts a very awkward and kind of weird, but then later on, terrifying scenario. It just continues to build. That's the thing. It never stops building tension in its first act. And what's so great about that first act, and then later on the movie, capitalize on that, it spends time providing depth to its characters. Like we spent time with Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård, and we get to know them as people, their backgrounds, how they kind of feel about each other, and the awkwardness of the situation. And later on, that all culminates in an excellent ending to the first act of this movie. The second act allows some kind of momentary breathing room, at least initially, and it introduces a new character and an element that connects to the first part of the movie in a great way. All I'll say is, and again, I can only say so much, that's when we're introduced to the Justin Long character. And I'll tell you right now, I'll get more to him. This is one of Justin Long's best roles. This is like a return. Not that, like, I don't think he's ever been a bad actor. I think he's always given it his all. But, a lot of the projects that he's been in, he seems to just been kind of like brushed over and ignored by, like, before he was in a ton of movies. But, like, back in the day, certainly in the early 2000s, I remember seeing him all the time, but then he kind of fell off. And I don't know if he just wasn't able to get a lot of work. This is one of his best roles ever. I think a lot of people, when they think of Justin Long, they often think of him like, oh yeah, Jeepers Creepers. I think this is even better than his role in Jeepers Creepers, and he's very good in that. But once we get to that second part, and then it continues on, it starts to build a world and a lore, and then it finally culminates in a third act that is so damn crazy, and maybe we can argue over the top, but I also think it's very satisfying. It earns its craziness when we get to the third act, because it's just building tension and more tension and more tension, and adds new elements and new little areas to explore until finally it's like boom, it's like and then it's running wild by the very end, literally running wild in a lot of cases. It's extremely well directed. It's perfectly edited and paced. It's a nice hour and 40 minute long, maybe hour 45. You don't feel it, chat. You really don't feel it. And it's just very smartly written. Like, none of the characters feel like, they're like one note. Like, there's something to them. There's a lot of meaning. They're defined by a lot. You get to know them, their personalities. There's certain things that they say that they repeat. It's like, you kind of get to know them. You get to know them as people. And so in case something bad happens to them later on in the movie, you're like, you fucking feel something. Whether that's happy or whether that's sad, Also, more on the technical side, its lighting and its use of darkness is very, very good. Listen, it does indulge in some jump scares, and usually I'm like, oh, come on. The thing is, the way they use jump scares, the couple times that they do it, they work very well, and they're very effective. Another thing about this movie is it's very funny. A lot of that humor is provided by Justin Long's character, but also Georgina Campbell and a couple other people in other scenarios. But yeah, it's surprisingly funny. The second act is very humorous, and it works because the first act is so tense and scary, because you don't know what's literally around the other corner. And it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. And so Justin Long provides a lot of the humor, and the writing is great for him. And like I said, I don't want to go into who else is in the film aside from our three. This has a larger cast than it lets on in the movie, I will say that. But no one gives a weak performance. Georgina Campbell, who I'm kind of unfamiliar with as an actress. I don't know what else she's been in. You guys can help me. Please remind me what she's been in. But yeah, she plays the woman who is there for a job interview. She's like in the filmmaking industry. Great. She's kind of like, if I were to compare her to anyone, she's kind of like the Laurie Strode-esque character in this movie. She's one of the scream queens, if you will. You can kind of make a comparison to that, and she does a great job. They provide her with depth. She has her strengths. She has her weaknesses and things. She's also very funny, and she's a hell of a survivor, Chad. But she goes to the fucking ringer, and she nails it. Bill Skarsgård, I think. I understand. I kind of understand why they cast Bill Skarsgård in this role, because what's so cool about that first act is, when you think of Bill Skarsgård, when you first see him, it's like, oh, he's fucking Pennywise. He's that evil clown. And so already, chat, when you've seen this in the trailer, you see this in marketing, when Georgina Campbell's character of Tess, when she goes to the house and she meets this guy who's living in the place that she's supposed to stay, you're already kind of on guard in a way, and you're already like a little unsure of him, and you can tell, like, even his performance, he's like a little awkward, and you don't know if that's because he's trying to be kind of overly earnest, or it's like, is it darker, and you just don't know with him. But then they start talking, they open up more, but you're still a little at unease, and they start playing with sound in this, the sound design in this film. There's a particular sound in this movie. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, okay, if I were to describe the sound that you're going to hear, it's going to freak you out. It's like that. That's all I'll say. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. That's the sound. You're going to hear that sound a couple times. You're like, oh shit. And it's pretty good. And then, yeah, the Justin Long, chats, that's the last of the main characters I really want to talk about. He's fucking great. He is so funny. His character, he's kind of, I don't want to see how I want to say how he's connected to the events of the first act, but he's kind of like that seemingly prototypical kind of shitbag from Hollywood that got success very early on. He's not really able to control himself. That's really all I'll say with him. But every scene he's in, he fucking and and for a good amount. Like when we see him in the second act, he's kind of by himself. And he's great. And even like his story, it's like, oh, this is just kind of fascinating. It's something that we are all too familiar with nowadays, Chad, that we often see in a lot of media and all I'll say is maybe celebrity type stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I like what they're doing here. And it makes you go back and forth on his character and what he's all about. Also, let me just say the set design in this movie. I don't want to say too much about the set design. All I'll say is when you see in the trailers, there's tunnels. There's tunnels and there's certain rooms in this movie that are very creepy and feel very old. And you just it's like oh God, the actors do a great job of selling just the fucking stink and the smell. I mean, just human body odor and feces and urine. And it's like, oh, again, I want to say too much, but it's like, oh my God, this place must just smell rancid. It must smell like just like death. And I love they do a great job. It's kind of it makes me think. I just realized this kind of feels in a way maybe slightly inspired by Resident Evil, where you have a seemingly, even though the mansion's horrifying, but then you have this underground level that is just a fucking nightmare. And it's like, that's kind of cool. It's like, they kind of did it right. If anyone were to do a Resident Evil live action adaptation in this movie, or excuse me, another live action Resident Evil adaptation again, they should look at this movie, because this is how it should fucking be. I'm not saying it has to be exactly like it, but they nailed it. They nailed like the seemingly ordinary and like, okay, there's something weird going on, but then underneath, Chad, it's like, oh my God, it's a labyrinth of nightmares. That's all I'll say. Like that to me is really, really cool. So yeah, it's a great movie. I went in really knowing nothing. I didn't look into this film at all. I just wanted to be surprised. All I saw was that original trailer that they released. Maybe a teaser or two that popped up on a service or commercial. But other than that, didn't see anything else. And yeah, all the twists, all the turns worked out. How they reveal it over time, how they pace it out. It's like, oh, whoa, that's really cool. It all makes sense. And yeah, just it continues to increase its pace and it gets more exciting, crazy after each act until finally it's just by the third act. And I was there for it, Chad. I was there for it. You know, it's funny. I've also been seeing a lot of people compare it like, oh, it's this year's Malignant. And I don't agree with that. Because my issue with Malignant is because Malignant, the first two acts of that movie, it's James Wan doing the same shit he always does. It's the same it's ghost stuff. It's like, it's ghost stuff. And you have characters you don't really care that much about. And then it has a crazy third act of taters. And it's like, okay, I can kind of see that where it goes crazy. But at the same time, it was so effective in building its small cast of characters, and its story made sense, and it didn't feel like it was then rushing towards the end. Everything felt like it was naturally... And everything naturally made sense, and each act was as strong as the last one. So I don't really understand that comparison other than that it's weird. Maybe it's because it's just weird, and it is weird. It's like, Jesus, it's creepy. If I were to say what it is, what I would compare it to, it would give everything away. So I'm not. But I don't agree if the whole it's like Malignant thing. I don't agree with that at all. I think that's a weird comparison. But other than that, I think it's a great movie. I think it's the best 2022. It's personally my favorite horror film. Listen, competition, whatever. X is probably still going to be on my top 10. This is definitely in my on my top 10 list, Chad. It's great. It's a return to I hate to even say return to form. It's just, hey, this is then showing like Justin Long is a great actor. All right, it's like give him another chance. Stop putting him in Kevin Smith movies. Okay, he's great. Very charismatic. And everyone else does a great job. From Georgina Campbell, want to see her in more stuff, Chad. She's a hell of a survivor, hell of a scream queen. And Bill Skarsgård is great in the movie, too. You just don't know what is he all about. He was fantastic. So, yeah, Chad, one of the best movies of the year. If I were to get... okay. If I were to criticize anything in this movie, it would be in the third act. Maybe some people won't get with how kind of crazy it does get. Maybe some people have issue with how the police are used, but at the same time, I was like, well, I kind of buy that. They do set up how it's like, well, they're not going to get involved because where this location is. They're like, we don't care. What goes there. But it does get really crazy, and there's not a lot of CGI in this movie. Most of it is a lot of great practical effects, a lot of great makeup stuff. I'm not even going to say what. All I'll say is that there's some good stuff here. But there is like a CGI shot at the end of the movie. I'm like, why did you do that? That was like, didn't care for that. That looked a little too CGI green screenish to me. And how that kind of, the chronology of certain things didn't really match up for me. It's like, well, how did that character get there? That character was there. That's kind of weird. That's all I'll say. That didn't really work, but other than that, it's still great. It's still great. So I would give this a high full price, chat, for myself. I would use the double toasted scale. I would give this a high full price. But what for the rest of you guys? What did you think of Barbarian? Again, no spoilers, of course. I don't want the movie spoiled for anyone. But what about you guys in the chat? How you guys feeling? Let me see. Let me guys see what you're saying. Let's go to scroll up. Let's see here. Justin Long in this. So back, but this movie certainly addresses a terrible real thing that does happen to some. Yeah, I don't even want, Sure. Yes. Justin Long in this reminded me a lot of a character from Tusk, but if the movie was better, it was even more of a shithead. Yes, also true. Was getting wreck vibes. I can kind of see. Yeah. In regards to something, yeah, I could totally see what you mean by wreck vibes. Yes, there is a thing in this where I could see you being reminded of wreck. Let's see here. Rat sounds. I guess I would say suckling. That's what I'll say. As good as this is, there's still a bladder. I'm not saying anything. Chris Ayres and the camera work is really good too, without giving anything away. But there's a point where they change aspect ratio, and I love that movies do that and do it intelligent. Yeah, they do that. I think it's cool. It's like a perspective thing. They change the perspective of you're seeing what the character's seeing, which I guess can kind of remind you of Wreck. That's fair. Mm-hmm. Now, it's like Malignant. I'm not saying it's like Malignant. Believe me. I keep saying. I keep hearing that, this is like this year's Malignant. I'm like, what do you mean? It's not like Malignant. Malignant is a boring movie until the third act. Barbarians are. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the thing that bothers me about Malignant. It's like, yeah, when it's revealed that Taters is, in the back of her head, it's like, wait, what? And he's hopping around. It's like the Matrix. Like, this is cool. It's stupid, but it's cool. I'm like, that was original. That was new. I didn't expect that. But you still have to sit through an hour and 30 minutes. Literally, Chad, an hour, 30 minutes of James Wan doing what he's been doing for 15 fucking years. And I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I was like, no, I have no justice for goddamn Gabriel. No, his name is Taters. I think it's this year's Malignant in the sense that it's a horror movie that comes out in a dumping month like September. There's a lot of people's radars, but then people see it and word of mouth spreads like wildfire and just explodes popular. Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. Thank you, 10 biddies. I didn't even think it got too crazy, though. I was invested enough. Yeah, I was invested, too. But I could see where some people would be like, oh, come on. But I wasn't, I didn't feel that way. I feel like there was a Jeepers Creepers reference. Yes, there is. There's 100% a Jeepers Creepers reference. I give it a full price this Christmas. I can't wait for the sequel, Wizard, Rogues, and Rangers. Yeah, that'd be cool. That might be fucking awesome if they do that. Even than a Popeye, 2-piece Oscar cheese. 100% bodacious. 100%. Casfay! Cheers, Casfay. Good to have you here. Let's see here. Not about Grog, though. Malignant turns into an action movie. I like it. A lot of people like Malignant. I get it. There's fans out there of that movie. Total respect to you. I'm just not a big fan. Yes, BSG. It is. Spoilers. It is about Armie Hammer eating people. When Armie Hammer arrived in the movie, chat, I was like, holy shit. It was his final film. His final film, chat, before his retirement. Yeah, but still, I think this is a really fun movie. I'm going to do probably a spoiler review for this film on Wednesday. I want to give it a little breathing room because I know not a lot of people have seen this, obviously. Because, it made $10 million. I think it has like a budget of 11, and it made like $10 million. So I was like, hey, that's pretty goddamn good, So I'm hoping that it'll continue to grow. Hopefully it'll get more eyes on it. I think this is probably going to do pretty well on VOD, but we'll eventually see. It's worth seeing in the theater, chat. I don't think you're going to feel like you wasted your money watching it. It's pretty good. Barbarian made number 1 on $10 million. It's a 20th century release. That's true. It's technically the first rated R Disney movie to make number 1 opening. Wow. Look at that. I did not know that. Yeah, because I was like, 20th Century Studios. It was one of their films. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I was like, it's a Disney movie, chap. There's no princess in it, though. Well, maybe. maybe it is. Maybe it is.